The morning sun rose over New Haven just like it had every day for the past 20 years. The golden light spread across endless fields of wheat and corn that fed not just the 50,000 people who lived there, but also supplied food to 12 other human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Children ran to school while their parents headed to the farms and factories that made this distant world feel like home. Jake Morrison stood on the balcony of the administration building, drinking his morning coffee and watching the city wake up. He had been the colony administrator for 8 years now, and he still felt proud every time he looked out at what they had built. New Haven was everything humanity had dreamed of when they first reached for the stars. It was peaceful, productive, and proof that humans could thrive anywhere in the universe. Down in the security office, Lisa Grant was finishing her night shift reports. As chief security officer, her biggest problems were usually drunk farmers and teenagers who stayed out too late. The colony had a small security force of maybe 50 people, mostly former military who wanted a quiet life after serving on Earth's defense ships. They carried basic weapons and drove around in simple patrol vehicles. Nobody expected them to fight a real war. The first sign of trouble came at exactly 9 in the morning when the orbital sensors started screaming alerts. Katie Bell, the young communications officer at the spaceport, stared at her screens in confusion. 12 large objects had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. They were moving fast and heading straight for New Haven. Katie tried to contact the unknown ships using standard greeting protocols. She sent messages in English, Standard Galactic, and even the few alien languages that humans had learned from. Peaceful contact with other species. The ships did not respond. They did not even slow down. Alex Turner was having breakfast with his wife when the emergency call came through. As commander of the USS Liberty, the colony's only real warship, he was responsible for protecting New Haven from any threats. The Liberty was not much of a ship by military standards. It had been designed for patrol duty and showing the flag, not for fighting a real battle. But it was all they had. Alex kissed his wife goodbye and ran to the spaceport. His crew of 23 men and women were already preparing the ship for launch. They were good people, mostly volunteers who had joined the Colonial Defense Force because they believed in protecting their new home. None of them had ever fired a shot in anger. As the Liberty lifted off from New Haven's surface, the alien ships were already entering the outer solar system. Through the ship's telescopes, Alex could see that they were warships. Sleek, predatory vessels that looked like they had been built for one purpose only: killing. Katie Bell kept trying to contact the alien fleet. She broadcast on every frequency she could think of, explaining that New Haven was a peaceful agricultural colony with no military significance. She told them that humans were not looking for trouble and just wanted to grow food and raise their families in peace. The alien ships did not answer. They just kept coming. Dr. Paul Martinez was in the colony hospital when the first evacuation orders went out. As the chief medical officer, he had seen his share of emergencies over the years: farm accidents, equipment failures, the occasional disease outbreak. But nothing had prepared him for this. The colony's emergency plan called for people to gather at designated shelters if there was ever a serious threat. Nobody had really believed they would ever need to use those shelters. The alien ships reached New Haven's orbit 3 hours after they were first detected. Up close, they were even more frightening. Each ship was over 1 kilometer long, covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. They moved with the smooth precision of predators who had done this many times before. Alex Turner tried one last time to contact the alien fleet. He identified himself as a military officer and demanded to know what they wanted. For the first time since arriving, one of the alien ships responded. The message was short and delivered in perfect English. Humans are no longer welcome in this sector. Your presence here ends today. The alien ships opened fire without any further warning. Beams of pure energy lanced down from orbit, striking New Haven cities with surgical precision. The colony's small defensive satellites were destroyed in seconds. The few orbital platforms that humans had built for manufacturing and research simply vanished in balls of superheated plasma. Alex ordered the Liberty to attack, knowing it was hopeless. His ship's weapons were designed for dealing with pirates and smugglers, not military warships. The Liberty's missiles exploded harmlessly against the alien ships. Shields, while return fire tore through the human vessel's armor like paper. The Liberty died fighting, taking 3 of Alex's crew with her. The surviving 20 members of his crew made it to the escape pods, but only Alex himself would live long enough to reach the planet's surface. The alien ships hunted down the escape pods one by one, destroying them with the same cold efficiency. They had shown the orbital defenses. Down on New Haven's surface, the bombardment was just beginning. The alien weapons struck the colony's major cities first. Government buildings, factories, and spaceports disappeared in flashes of light that could be seen from orbit. But the aliens were not content with destroying infrastructure. They wanted to kill every human on the planet. Jake Morrison was in the administration building's basement bunker when the building above him was hit. The reinforced concrete and steel that was supposed to protect the colony's leadership proved useless against weapons that could melt rock. Jake felt the floor shake as 5 stories of offices and meeting rooms collapsed into rubble above his head. The bunker's emergency communications still worked, and Jake could hear reports coming in from across the colony. The aliens were not just bombing military targets. They were hitting schools, hospitals, residential areas, and even the farms outside the cities. This was not a military operation. This was genocide. Lisa Grant tried to coordinate the colony's defense from the security headquarters, but there was nothing to defend with. Her officers carried rifles and pistols that would be useless against ships in orbit. Some of them tried to set up anti-aircraft weapons from the emergency stockpiles, but the alien bombardment was too accurate and too intense. Underground shelters that had been designed to protect people from natural disasters became death traps. As alien weapons burrowed through dozens of meters of rock and soil, Dr. Martinez found himself treating burns and radiation sickness with medical supplies that had never been intended for war wounds. The orbital bombardment lasted for 6 hours. When it finally stopped, most of New Haven's cities were gone. The aliens had turned millions of tons of concrete and steel into radioactive dust. But they were not finished yet. Landing craft began descending from the alien ships. Hundreds of them, carrying thousands of alien soldiers to finish what the bombardment had started. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Empire, though the surviving humans would not learn that name until much later. They were bipedal creatures with gray skin and 4 arms, each ending in claws that could tear through metal. The Zephyrian ground forces moved through New Haven's ruins with practiced efficiency. They used handheld scanners to detect human life signs in the wreckage, then systematically eliminated any survivors they found: men, women, children, elderly people who could barely walk. It did not matter to the Zephyrians. They killed them. All. Dr. Martinez watched through a crack in his shelter's wall as alien soldiers executed a group of children who had been hiding in the school basement. The aliens did not show any emotion as they worked. This was just a job to them. Exterminating humans was no different from exterminating any other pest. Jake Morrison survived for 3 days in his bunker before the Zephyrians found him. He used the shelter's emergency transmitter to send one final message into space, though he knew nobody would receive it for months. "This is New Haven Colony Administrator Jake Morrison," he said into the microphone. "We are all going to die here. Tell Earth what happened to us. Tell them to remember." The Zephyrian ships left New Haven's orbit 2 weeks after they had arrived. They had completed their mission with the same cold efficiency they had shown from the beginning. 50,000 humans were dead. The colony's cities were ruins. The farms that had fed 12 worlds were radioactive wastelands that would be poisonous for decades. Behind them, the aliens left only automated beacons that would eventually carry news of the massacre back to Earth. But the Zephyrians believed. They had eliminated any witnesses to their crime. They had made a mistake that would cost them everything. The automated distress beacon from New Haven drifted through space for 6 months before reaching the outer monitoring stations that protected Earth's solar system. The small device had been damaged during the attack, and its message was broken into fragments that made little sense to the computers that first received it. Lieutenant Commander Ben Phillips was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee during the night shift at Monitoring Station Alpha when the beacon's signal finally came through clearly enough to decode. Ben had been working at the station for 4 years, mostly dealing with routine traffic reports and the occasional lost cargo ship. Nothing had prepared him for what he found in the beacon's memory banks. The first part of the message was standard colony identification codes. New Haven, Kepler 442c, population 50,000, agricultural classification. Ben knew the colony well from the reports. His sister had almost moved there with her family before deciding to stay on Mars instead. The second part of the message made his blood run cold. Emergency. Under attack. Orbital bombardment in progress. 50,000 civilians. No military targets. This is genocide. Tell Earth to remember us. Ben's hands shook as he forwarded the message to Earth Defense Command. He had been trained to handle emergency situations, but nothing in his training had covered anything like this. An entire human colony wiped out by aliens. It seemed impossible, but the beacon's memory banks contained recorded sensor data that proved every word was true. Admiral Susan Clark was awakened at 3 a.m. by the emergency call from her aide. As Earth's highest-ranking military officer, she was used to being woken up for crises, but usually they involved budget disputes or political problems. She had never been woken up to hear about the complete destruction of a human colony. Clark read the report 3 times before she fully understood what she was looking at. The sensor data was clear. 12 alien warships had appeared at New Haven without warning, ignored all attempts at communication, and systematically destroyed every human settlement on the planet. Then they had landed ground forces to hunt down and kill any survivors. Within an hour, Clark had assembled a crisis team in the Pentagon's deepest underground bunkers. The room was filled with the most important people in Earth's government and military. Everyone looked tired and confused. Nobody had expected to be dealing with humanity's first case of alien genocide. Intelligence. Director Ryan Scott had been working all night to analyze the data from New Haven. His team had enhanced the broken recordings and pieced together a timeline of the attack. What they found was even worse than the first reports had suggested. The aliens were systematic, Scott explained to the assembled group. They didn't just attack military targets. They specifically targeted schools, hospitals, and residential areas. This wasn't a military operation. It was designed to kill every human on the planet. President Helen Carter listened to the briefing with growing horror. She had been in office for 3 years and had dealt with many crises, but nothing had prepared her for this. 50,000 American citizens and their families had been murdered by aliens who had never even tried to communicate with Earth. What do we know about these aliens? Carter asked. Dr. Amanda Foster, Earth's leading expert on alien species, stepped forward with her report. Based on the sensor data, we believe they call themselves the Zephyrian Empire. We've had limited contact with them through third parties, but they've never shown any interest in direct communication with humanity. They control 12 star systems and have a population of approximately 2 billion. What are their capabilities? Asked Defense Secretary John Miller. Superior to ours in most areas, Foster admitted. Their ships are faster, their weapons are more powerful, and they have much more experience with interstellar warfare. But they're not invincible. Our latest ships can match their technology in some areas. General Chris Baker, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, spoke up from his seat at the long table. With respect, Dr. Foster, their technological advantages don't matter. What matters is that they murdered 50,000 innocent people. We need to hit them back, and we need to hit them hard. And start a war we can't win? Asked Secretary of State Patricia Williams. These aliens have been traveling between stars. For centuries, we've barely been doing it for 50 years. Maybe we should try to negotiate. Negotiate? Baker's voice rose. They killed children, Patricia. They hunted down families hiding in bomb shelters and executed them. What exactly do you think we should negotiate about? The debate continued for hours. Some officials argued for trying to find a diplomatic solution. Others wanted immediate military action. President Carter listened to all of them, but her mind was already made up. She had seen the recordings of alien soldiers executing human children. There would be no negotiation with monsters. General Baker, Carter said finally, I want you to prepare a military response. Not a limited strike, not a show of force. I want you to make sure the Zephyrian Empire can never threaten humanity again. Baker nodded grimly. What are our rules of engagement, Madam President? Carter was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the children who had died on New Haven, about the families who had been murdered for the crime of being human. There are no rules of engagement, General. The Zephyrians chose to fight a war of extermination. We're going to give them exactly what they asked for. While the government debated humanity's response, news of New Haven's destruction was spreading across Earth's communication networks. The first reports were carefully controlled, but within hours the full story was everywhere. Humanity's first encounter with truly hostile aliens had ended in genocide. The public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Recruitment centers across Earth were flooded with volunteers wanting to join the military. Young people who had never thought about military service were standing in lines that stretched for blocks. Parents whose children had been considering emigration to the colonies were pulling them back to Earth. In the industrial centers of Luna and Mars, factory managers received priority orders to begin producing military equipment. Civilian spacecraft assembly lines were converted to build warships. Mining operations in the asteroid belt were redirected to provide materials for weapons and armor. Dr. Rebecca James, one of Earth's most brilliant theoretical physicists, was called to a meeting with Admiral Clark 3 days after the New Haven beacon arrived. James had been working on exotic weapons research for the past 5 years, mostly theoretical projects that seemed too dangerous to actually build. Dr. James, Clark said, I need to know about your stellar collapse research. Can it be weaponized? James felt her stomach drop. The Stellar Collapse Project was her most secret work, a theoretical study of how to disrupt the star's nuclear fusion process. She had never imagined it would be used as a weapon. Theoretically, yes, she admitted. But the energy requirements are enormous. You would need to place multiple devices in specific positions around a star. And the results would be ... catastrophic, Clark finished. That's exactly what I'm looking for. How long would it take to build these devices? 6 months, maybe 8 if everything goes perfectly. But Admiral, you're talking about killing a star. Everything in that solar system would be destroyed. Clark's expression didn't change. The Zephyrians killed 50,000 civilians without warning. They hunted down children and executed them. I don't care if we have to kill their star to stop them from doing it again. James stared at the Admiral for a long moment. She had always believed that science should be used to help humanity, not to destroy entire solar systems. But she had also seen the recordings from New Haven. She had watched alien soldiers murder human families who had never done anything to deserve such treatment. I'll need a team of at least 50 physicists and engineers, James said finally. "And complete access to the military's research facilities. You'll have whatever you need," Clark promised. "Just build me a weapon that can end this war permanently." As James left the meeting, she felt the weight of what she was about to do. She was going to build a weapon that could kill stars. But the Zephyrians had started this war by murdering innocent people. Now humanity was going to finish it. Word of the military buildup spread quickly through Earth's diplomatic networks. Alien ambassadors from friendly species sent urgent messages to their home governments. The humans were mobilizing for war on a scale that nobody had ever seen before. Ships were being built in numbers that seemed impossible. Weapons were being developed that pushed the boundaries of known physics. On the outer colonies, human settlers looked up at the night sky with new fear. If the Zephyrians could destroy New Haven without warning, they could attack any human world. Colonial militias began training with weapons that had been stored away for decades. Civilian ships were retrofitted with military equipment, but Earth's response was about more than just military preparation. In the deepest levels of the Pentagon, Admiral Clark was planning something that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. She was planning to send a message that would be heard across the stars. The Zephyrians had believed that humans were weak. They had thought that destroying one colony would teach humanity to stay away from their territory. The construction of humanity's revenge fleet began within days of President Carter's declaration of war. Every shipyard in the solar system was converted to military production. Civilian workers found themselves building warships instead of cargo, vessels, weapons instead of mining equipment. The entire human economy was focused on one goal: building a fleet powerful enough to destroy the Zephyrian Empire. Luna Station, humanity's largest orbital construction facility, became the center of this massive effort. The station had been built to assemble cargo ships and passenger vessels for the growing colonies. Now it was being expanded at breakneck speed to accommodate the construction of humanity's largest warships. Captain Nathan Cole received his new assignment while commanding a patrol ship near the outer colonies. He had been in the military for 15 years, serving on everything from destroyers to cruisers, but he had never commanded anything like the ship they wanted to give him now. The USS Vengeance was still under construction, but the plans showed a vessel unlike anything humanity had ever built. The Vengeance was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to level entire cities. Its armor was made from advanced alloys that could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. Its engines could push the massive ship faster than most fighters. But most importantly, it was designed to carry the special weapons that Dr. Rebecca James was developing in her secret laboratory. Cole arrived at Luna Station 3 months after construction began and found the place transformed. The quiet facility, he remembered, had become a hive of activity. Thousands of workers labored around the clock, welding hull plates and installing weapon systems. The sound of construction never stopped. Sparks flew from welding torches while heavy machinery moved massive components into position. Lieutenant Emma Wright was one of the first officers assigned to Cole's crew. She had been working as a weapons specialist on Earth's defensive platforms when she volunteered for the Revenge Fleet. Wright was brilliant with military technology and had helped design some of the new weapons systems that would be installed on the Vengeance. "Captain," Wright said during their first meeting, "I need you to understand what we're building here. These aren't normal weapons. The main gun can punch through a moon. The missile systems can track and destroy hundreds of targets simultaneously. This ship is designed to fight an entire enemy fleet by itself." Commander Steve Adams joined the crew as tactical officer. He had spent the last 5 years studying alien military tactics and was considered one of humanity's experts on Zephyrian combat doctrine. Adams had reviewed every piece of intelligence Earth had gathered about the enemy and had developed battle plans that would maximize the fleet's effectiveness. The Zephyrians rely on superior technology and overwhelming firepower. Adams explained to the assembled crew. They're used to fighting enemies who surrender quickly or die even faster. They've never faced an opponent who could match their technology and exceed their determination. Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos was the ship's chief engineer. She had helped design the Vengeance's revolutionary power systems and knew every component better than anyone else. Santos had worked on the project from the beginning, putting in 18-hour days to make sure the ship would be ready for combat. This ship has 3 fusion reactors instead of the usual one, Santos explained during the crew briefings. The power output is incredible, but it means we can operate all weapon systems at maximum capacity while maintaining full shield strength. The Zephyrians won't expect that kind of sustained firepower. While the Vengeance was being built, hundreds of other ships were taking shape throughout the solar system. Mars shipyards were producing destroyers and cruisers. The asteroid belt facilities were building support vessels and supply ships. Even Earth's orbital stations were contributing smaller ships to the growing fleet. Admiral Clark visited Luna Station regularly to check on progress. She knew that this fleet represented humanity's only chance to strike back at the Zephyrians. If the revenge operation failed, Earth would be defenseless against alien retaliation. There would be no second chance. How long until the fleet is ready? Clark asked during one of her visits. The Vengeance will be finished in 2 months, Cole replied. The rest of the fleet should be ready around the same time. We'll have 300 ships total, including 50 heavy cruisers and 12 dreadnoughts. Clark nodded grimly. That's still smaller than what the Zephyrians can field. We'll be outnumbered at least 3 to 1. But we'll have better coordination and superior motivation, Adams pointed out. The Zephyrians think this is just another border conflict. They don't understand that they're fighting for their survival. In her secret laboratory deep beneath Luna's surface, Dr. Rebecca James was working on humanity's ultimate weapon. The stellar collapse devices were the most complex machines ever built by human hands. Each device was the size of a small spacecraft and packed with exotic matter that could disrupt the nuclear fusion process that powered stars. James had assembled a team of the brightest scientists and engineers in human space. They worked in shifts around the clock, knowing that their success or failure would determine the outcome of the war. The mathematics involved were staggering. One small error in the calculations could cause the devices to fail completely or explode prematurely. The theory is sound, James explained to Admiral Clark during a classified briefing. If we can place 6 devices in the correct positions around the Zephyrian home star, we can destabilize its fusion process. The star will collapse and then explode as a supernova. Everything within 10 light years will be destroyed. How long will the process take once the devices are activated? Clark asked. Approximately 4 hours from activation to stellar collapse. The explosion itself will take about 12 hours to reach maximum intensity. Any ships in the system will have time to escape if they move quickly. Clark considered this information carefully. The Zephyrians would have time to evacuate some of their population, but not all of it. Billions would die when their star exploded. It was exactly the kind of overwhelming response that the alien genocide deserved. Intelligence reports from deep space reconnaissance missions were arriving regularly at Earth Defense Command. Captain Gary Lewis led one of the scout fleets that was gathering information about Zephyrian military positions. His ships used advanced stealth technology to avoid detection while mapping enemy defenses. The Zephyrian home system contains 12 inhabited planets, Lewis reported during a secure communication. The population is concentrated on the inner worlds, with approximately 2 billion civilians total. Their military forces include over 800 ships of various classes. Captain Nicole Davis commanded another scout group that was studying Zephyrian patrol patterns and communication networks. Her intelligence was crucial for planning the attack routes that would allow the human fleet to reach the enemy Home system undetected. They're confident, Davis reported. Too confident. Their patrols are routine and predictable. They're not expecting an attack, especially not one of the scale we're planning. We should be able to get within striking distance before they realize what's happening. As the months passed, the revenge fleet began to take shape. The USS Vengeance was joined by sister ships USS Retribution and USS Justice. Heavy cruisers with names like Avenger, Nemesis, and Wrath rolled out of the construction bays. Hundreds of smaller vessels filled out the fleet roster. The crews for these ships came from across human space. Experienced officers from Earth's defense forces worked alongside volunteers from the outer colonies. Veterans of border skirmishes served next to civilians who had never seen combat. All of them were united by one goal, making the Zephyrians pay for what they had done to New Haven. Training exercises began as soon as the ships were completed. The fleet practiced complex maneuvers in Earth's outer solar system, learning to coordinate their movements and weapon systems. Mock battles against automated targets tested their combat readiness. Everything had to be perfect because there would be no opportunity for mistakes during the real operation. Captain Cole pushed his crew hard during these exercises. The Vengeance was designed to be the fleet's flagship, leading the attack against the most heavily defended targets. Every member of the crew needed to know their job perfectly and be able to perform under extreme pressure. "We're not just fighting for revenge," Cole told his officers during one of their final briefings. "We're fighting to make sure no other human colony suffers the same fate as New Haven. This fleet represents everything humanity has learned about war, and we're going to use that knowledge to end this threat permanently." The final component of the Revenge fleet was its intelligence network. Spy satellites and automated probes had been dispatched to Zephyrian space months earlier, establishing a communication network that would provide real-time intelligence during the attack. These systems would also broadcast humanity's message to the galaxy. When the operation was complete, Admiral Clark gathered the fleet commanders for a final briefing 1 week before departure. The massive conference room at Luna Station was filled with the best officers humanity had to offer. These men and women would lead 300 ships into battle against an enemy that had never known defeat. The human Revenge fleet departed from Luna Station on a cold Tuesday morning that would be remembered forever in the history books. 300 ships moved away from Earth's solar system in perfect formation, their engines creating a river of light against the darkness of space. Every person on Earth watched the departure, knowing that their fate now rested with Admiral Clark and her crews. The journey to Zephyrian space took 3 weeks, using humanity's newest hyperspace drives. The fleet traveled in complete radio silence, using only coded laser communications between ships. They could not risk being detected by Zephyrian patrol ships or automated sensors that might warn the enemy of their approach. Captain Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance, watching the star charts that showed their progress toward the enemy home system. His crew had used the travel time well, running constant drills and checking every weapon system. The ship was as ready for battle as human engineering could make it. "Approaching the outer edge of Zephyrian space," reported Navigator Lieutenant Tony Rodriguez. "All ships maintaining formation and stealth protocols." The Zephyrian border defenses were exactly where human intelligence had predicted them to be. A line of automated sensor platforms and patrol ships designed to detect incoming threats. But the defenses had been built to stop conventional attacks, not the advanced stealth technology that humanity had developed specifically for this mission. Admiral Clark had divided her fleet into 3 attack groups for maximum effectiveness. She commanded the center force from her flagship USS Judgment, leading the main assault directly toward the Zephyrian home world. Captain Gary Lewis took his ships around the system's edge to attack the outer defensive positions. Captain Nicole Davis led the 3rd group toward the industrial worlds, where most of the enemy fleet was stationed. The attack began at exactly 0600 hours, coordinated across multiple light-years of space. Human ships dropped out of hyperspace simultaneously at dozens of locations throughout the Zephyrian system. The enemy had no warning before the first missiles started flying. Admiral Kefver was reviewing routine patrol reports when the alarms began screaming throughout the Zephyrian command center. The old warrior had commanded the Empire's fleets for over 30 years and had never seen anything like what his sensors were showing him. Hundreds of ships had appeared throughout the system as if from nowhere. "Impossible," Keffer muttered as he studied the tactical displays. "The humans don't have this many ships. Our intelligence said they barely had 50 vessels capable of interstellar travel." The first Zephyrian patrol ships to encounter the human fleet were destroyed before they could send warning messages. Captain Cole's dreadnought group struck like a hammer against the outer defense platforms, reducing fortified positions to scrap metal with concentrated firepower that the aliens had never imagined possible. Lieutenant Emma Wright coordinated the Vengeance's weapon systems with deadly precision. The ship's main guns fired repeatedly, each shot powerful enough to destroy a building. Secondary weapons tracked and eliminated dozens of smaller targets while the missile systems overwhelmed enemy point defenses with sheer numbers. "Target the command ship," Cole ordered as a large Zephyrian vessel tried to organize a counterattack. "I want their admiral to know what's happening before he dies." The Vengeance's main gun charged for 3 seconds before releasing a beam of pure energy that cut the enemy command ship in half. The massive Zephyrian vessel exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from orbit, taking Admiral Keffer and his entire staff with it. Captain Gary Lewis led his strike group against the system's outer worlds with ruthless efficiency. These planets were home to Zephyrian military academies and training facilities, where future officers learned how to conduct orbital bombardments against defenseless civilians. Lewis made sure they would never graduate. "All ships begin orbital bombardment of military targets," Lewis commanded over the secure communication channel. "Use precision strikes only. We're not here to kill civilians unless they get in our way." The human fleet's discipline was remarkable considering what the Zephyrians had done to New Haven. Ship after ship passed up easy shots at civilian targets, focusing instead on military installations and government buildings. This was not mindless revenge. This was calculated justice. Captain Nicole Davis encountered the largest concentration of enemy ships near the industrial world of Zephyr Prime. Over 200 Zephyrian vessels were stationed there, including some of the Empire's most advanced battleships. Her 70 ships were outnumbered almost 3-1, but they had advantages the enemy could not match. "All vessels, implement Battle Plan Omega," Davis transmitted. "Coordinate your targeting systems and focus fire on the largest ships first. Don't let them organize a proper formation." The human ships attacked with a coordination that stunned the Zephyrian commanders. Instead of each ship picking its own targets, the entire force operated like a single weapon. Concentrated missile barrages overwhelmed individual enemy vessels while coordinated energy weapon fire cut through their defenses. Commander Steve Adams aboard the Vengeance was monitoring communications from across the battle zone. His intelligence training allowed him to understand the intercepted Zephyrian transmissions, and what he heard filled him with grim satisfaction. "Captain," Adams reported, "the enemy is in complete disarray. Their field commanders are requesting permission to retreat, but there's no central command left to give orders. We've decapitated their entire leadership structure." The battle for the Zephyrian home system lasted 18 hours. During that time, the human fleet systematically destroyed every military installation, space station, and defensive platform. The aliens who had seemed so powerful when they attacked defenseless New Haven proved unable to stand against opponents who could fight back. But Admiral Clark was not satisfied with destroying the Zephyrian military. She had intercepted enemy communications during the battle, including recorded messages where Zephyrian officers boasted about the massacre at New Haven. The aliens showed no remorse for murdering 50,000 civilians. They seemed proud of their genocide. "All ships, this is Admiral Clark," she transmitted on the fleet-wide channel. "Proceed to Phase 2 of the operation. Deploy the stellar collapse devices according to Dr. James's specifications. It's time to send our message to the galaxy." Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos supervised the deployment of the stellar collapse devices from the Vengeance's specially modified cargo bay. Each device was the size of a small fighter and packed with exotic matter that could disrupt the nuclear fusion process, keeping the system's star alive. "Device 1 away," Santos reported as the first weapon separated from the ship. "All systems showing green. Proceeding to deployment position 2. The 6 devices had to be placed in specific positions around the Zephyrian star, forming a geometric pattern that would create resonance waves throughout the stellar core. Dr. James's calculations were precise to within fractions of a percentage point. Any error would cause the weapons to fail completely. Other ships in the fleet were busy with their own assignments. Reconnaissance vessels scanned the system for any hidden Zephyrian bases or escape ships. Supply ships refueled and rearmed the combat vessels. Medical ships treated the surprisingly few human casualties from the one-sided battle. The Zephyrian civilian population was beginning to understand what was happening. Panic spread across their worlds as news of the military's complete defeat reached the cities. Some tried to flee in civilian spacecraft, but most had nowhere to go. The human fleet controlled all approach routes out of the system. Captain Cole received a priority transmission from one of the Zephyrian worlds. A civilian leader was offering to surrender and negotiate for the lives of his people. Cole listened to the message in silence before forwarding it to Admiral Clark for a response. "Tell them there will be no negotiations," Clark replied after reviewing the transmission. They had their chance to negotiate when they arrived at New Haven. They chose genocide instead. Now they get to experience what they gave to our people. As the stellar collapse devices reached their final positions, Dr. James's team began the activation sequence from their mobile laboratory aboard the research ship USS Discovery. The process was delicate and could not be rushed. One mistake could destroy the devices and waste humanity's only chance for total victory. "All devices are in position and responding to control signals," reported Dr. James over the secure channel. "Beginning activation sequence in 60 seconds. All ships should withdraw to minimum safe distance immediately." The human fleet began moving away from the Zephyrian star as the countdown continued. The ships that had fought so hard to reach this moment were now racing to escape before their ultimate weapon turned the entire system into an expanding ball of superheated plasma. 30 seconds to activation, James announced. "All device systems are functioning perfectly. The stellar disruption field will begin building as soon as the sequence completes." Captain Cole watched the tactical display as his ship moved away from the doomed star. In a few hours, the fusion process that had burned for millions of years would be disrupted by human technology. The collapse of the Zephyrian star began 4 hours after Dr. James activated the stellar disruption devices. At first, the changes were subtle. Solar flares that had been routine became violent eruptions. The star's magnetic field twisted into impossible shapes. Deep within the stellar core, the nuclear fusion that had burned for millions of years began to fail. Captain Nathan Cole watched the readings from the USS Vengeance's sensor array as his ship maintained position at the edge of the system. The numbers told a story of controlled destruction that would have been impossible without human technology. Every calculation Dr. James had made was proving correct as the star slowly died. Stellar core temperature dropping rapidly, reported Science Officer Lieutenant Carol Murphy. The fusion process is breaking down exactly as predicted. We're witnessing the death of a star that should have burned for another billion years. On the bridge of her flagship USS Judgment, Admiral Susan Clark monitored reports from across the human fleet. Every ship had withdrawn to minimum safe distance, but they were all recording everything that happened. This moment would be studied by scientists and military historians for centuries to come. The Zephyrian worlds were in complete chaos. Civilian ships fled the inner planets in desperate attempts to escape the coming destruction, but most would not make it far enough before the star exploded. The aliens who had shown no mercy to human children were now experiencing the same helplessness their victims had felt. Captain Gary Lewis commanded the perimeter watch from his cruiser USS Hammer. His job was to monitor any escape attempts and ensure that no Zephyrian ships carried word of humanity's capabilities to other alien civilizations. The galaxy would learn what had happened here, but only when Earth was ready to tell the story. Admiral, we're detecting several large civilian transports attempting to reach hyperspace jump points, Lewis reported. Should we intercept them? Clark considered the question carefully. The civilian ships posed no military threat, but they carried millions of Zephyrian refugees who might seek revenge against humanity in the future. However, allowing some survivors would serve as witnesses to what happened when aliens threatened human colonies. Let them go, Clark decided. But scan their ships thoroughly. I want to know exactly who escaped and where they're heading. The galaxy needs to hear this story from the survivors themselves. Dr. Rebecca James watched the stellar collapse from her laboratory aboard the research ship USS Discovery. The exotic matter devices she had created were performing flawlessly, disrupting the delicate balance of forces that kept the star stable. Her greatest scientific achievement was also becoming humanity's most terrible weapon. The stellar core has reached critical instability, James announced over the fleet communication channel. Complete collapse will occur in approximately 20 minutes. The resulting supernova will be visible from neighboring star systems within hours. The Zephyrian star had been a blue giant, much larger and more energetic than Earth's sun. When it collapsed, the explosion would release more energy than most civilizations used in their entire existence. Every planet in the system would be vaporized instantly. The blast wave would sterilize worlds in neighboring systems. Commander Steve Adams was monitoring alien communication networks throughout the local galactic region. His intelligence equipment could intercept messages across dozens of star systems, and what he was hearing proved that humanity's demonstration was having exactly the intended effect. Admiral, we're picking up emergency transmissions from at least 40 different alien civilizations, Adams reported. They're all asking the same questions. Who are the humans? How did they destroy an entire star? What do they want? Clark smiled grimly as she listened to the intercepted messages. Fear was spreading through the galaxy faster than the light from the dying star. Alien governments that had ignored humanity's existence were now desperately trying to understand what they were dealing with. The stellar collapse reached its final phase 23 minutes after Dr. James's prediction. The massive star, which had burned steadily for millions of years, suddenly contracted to a fraction of its original size. The gravitational forces involved were beyond human comprehension, crushing matter into forms that existed nowhere else in the universe. Then came the explosion. The Zephyrian star erupted with the force of 1 billion hydrogen bombs detonating simultaneously. A wave of superheated plasma expanded outward at nearly the speed of light, carrying temperatures that could melt any known material. The 12 planets that had been home to the Zephyrian Empire simply ceased to exist, reduced to their component atoms and MICROSECONDS. Captain Nicole Davis commanded the sensor platforms that recorded every detail of the stellar destruction. The data would be invaluable for future weapons development. But more importantly, it would provide proof of what humanity could accomplish when threatened. "The blast wave has reached the fourth planet," Davis reported as she watched the destruction unfold. "Surface temperature is now over 10,000 degrees. Complete sterilization confirmed." The human fleet maintained their positions as the expanding shell of stellar debris rushed past them. Their ship's shields glowed white-hot as they deflected radiation that would have been instantly fatal to any unprotected crew. The power of a dying star was something that had to be experienced to be truly understood. Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos monitored the USS Vengeance's engineering systems as the ship weathered the radiation storm. Every component was being pushed to its limits, but the human technology held firm. The ships that had carried humanity's revenge were surviving to witness its completion. "All systems holding steady," Santos reported. "Radiation levels are dropping as the main blast wave passes. We should be clear to resume normal operations within the hour." As the immediate danger passed, Admiral Clark prepared to deliver humanity's message to the galaxy. The communication arrays aboard her flagship had been modified to broadcast on every known frequency, ensuring that no alien civilization could claim they had not received the warning. "This is Admiral Susan Clark of the Earth Defense Force," she began, her voice carrying across space to listening posts throughout the local galactic region. "You have just witnessed the complete destruction of the Zephyrian Empire. Their crime was the unprovoked genocide of 50,000 human civilians on the colony world of New Haven." Clark paused to let her words sink in before continuing. "The Zephyrians believed that humans were weak and would not respond to such an atrocity. They were wrong. We do not negotiate with species that commit genocide. We do not show mercy to those who murder our children. We eliminate threats to human civilization completely and permanently." The Admiral's message was being recorded by alien intelligence services across the galaxy. Every word would be analyzed and debated by alien leaders trying to understand this new player in galactic politics. Humanity had announced its presence with the death of a star. "Let this serve as a warning to every alien civilization," Clark continued. "Humanity will expand to whatever worlds we choose. We will establish colonies wherever we find suitable planets. Any species that interferes with human civilians will share the fate of the Zephyrian Empire. This star system is our proof that we have both the will and the capability to destroy any threat to our people." Captain Cole listened to the Admiral's speech while watching the expanding cloud of stellar debris that had once been the Zephyrian home system. In the space of a few hours, humanity had gone from being a minor player in galactic politics to the most feared military power in known space. The human fleet began its journey home 3 days after the stellar explosion. Behind them, they left only empty space where 12 worlds had once orbited a living star. The Zephyrian Empire, which had controlled dozens of star systems and commanded billions of subjects, had been erased from existence. News of the Zephyr system's destruction spread through the galaxy's communication networks faster than the expanding debris field. Alien civilizations that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence suddenly found themselves faced with a species that could destroy stars as easily as other races destroyed cities. On Earth, President Helen Carter addressed the world as the Revenge Fleet began its journey home. The planet had been in suspense for weeks, waiting to learn whether humanity's gamble had succeeded or failed. The news that came back exceeded everyone's expectations. "My fellow humans," Carter said from the Oval Office, "justice has been served. The aliens who murdered our people on New Haven have paid the ultimate price for their crimes. Every world they called home has been destroyed. Their empire has been wiped from the galaxy." The president's words were broadcast to every human colony and settlement across known space. On worlds that had lived in fear of alien attack, colonists celebrated in the streets. The monsters who had seemed so powerful were gone forever, destroyed. by human technology and determination. But Carter's message also carried a warning for humanity itself. "We have become something new today," she said. "We are no longer the peaceful explorers who left Earth seeking new homes among the stars. We have become the species that other civilizations fear. That power comes with tremendous responsibility.